Welcome to Quit to Win, the show where we explore the moment people had to let go of destructive pattern, limiting identity, and the internal battle to build and rebuild their life with purpose and clarity. Today's guest is Po'okela Mossman, international speaker, executive coach, combat medic veteran, former contractors, ministry leaders, and the author of Pulse check how to protect your leadership journey from bad advice, receiving example, and a toxic environment. Over 17 years, Po'okela has worked with leaders at every level, from startup to the C-suite, helping them break free from the toxic environment, burnout, and to build avoid burnout and to build a driven, value-driven culture. He's the founder and CEO of the Chief Development and Leadership Strategy and the husband and father of Paul, whose faith run through everything he has built. He began as a carpenter, built a contracting business, served as a combat medic under pressure that's shaping everything, and eventually discovered that being great at your craft and being great at leading people are two entirely different skills. And that gap between them costs more than most leaders realize. It's really a pleasure and honor to have you on the show. Okay.
Benaya, thank you so much for that great introductions. And I'm excited for today's conversation. I love what the podcast is doing and the impact it's already creating. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michaela. So you started as a carpenter, working with your hands, building things that had to hold up. What did that craft teach you about standards and accountability that you later had to completely relearn when you became responsible for people instead of structure?
Ooh, standards and accountability. I love that we're starting off with this here and working with my hands. Benai, I'd say I learned quickly. I'm one of those people that I learn with my hands. It's like if you get me involved with something, I will learn that topic much more better, right? There's so much that I'll retain in my head. There's so much that we can talk about, but there's a certain part for me that I'm the one in the meeting. Eventually, I'm getting a little, restless in my chair, wanting to do something, wanting to actually go out, not just talk about it all day long. So carpentry definitely allowed me to work with my hands a lot. I love the process of building something, right? So taking something from one component and transferring it to something else. Now with your question with standards and accountability, there's a story. It's not my story, but it's a story out there that I heard once that pretty much goes like this. He's a carpenter that was working all his life building everyone's home. And he started off really just into it and excited. And as the years went on, he slowly started to take some shortcuts, and then just kind of, lose his passion for it. Eventually, he came to his last house that he was building. And by then, he already had some bad habits and some shortcuts of what he did just to get the job done. He was once very passionate about it. And he eventually, on this last house, he was just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And as he finished the last part, the person, the owner or the contractor went ahead and handed him the keys. And as he was looking at his tools, she thought, "Why are you giving me the keys?" And he said, "Well, this is your home."
Ooh.
And it's almost yes, that reaction 100%, where it's almost that tough reminder. It's like never take shortcuts on something that you're putting your name on. Something that if you had to sign off on the work that you did every day and putting your name on it, how would that feel? How would that look? Right now, he has to live in a home that he knows he took shortcuts of. And I think that's a powerful lesson on standards and accountability when you think about it at the end of the day.
Yeah, amazing. So true. I think every now and then he's going to, the fear that he's going to have is going to be more owing to the underneath work he did. It's really lovely, lovely. Thank you so much for sharing. And also, you have said that hiring your first business coach was the moment your perspective shift from working harder to leading smarter. What does a leader who work harder instead of leading smarter look like to the people around them?
I say that they're a great performer, and I think we're in today's world we still promote those, right? And those are the ones that get frustrated as I hit that moment that you realize your own limits. And though there is great, things in getting a job done and working hard, there has to be a time when we realize that there's only so much that we can do by working hard. We need to, if we don't stop to re-strategize, to learn better processes or to learn better ways, we'll keep getting the same problems and the same challenges. It's been said that the thought process that created the problem, you need a new way of thinking to create the solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where that balance comes in, where I was raised with good work ethic to go ahead and make sure I'm putting my work in, but at the same time to pause and to look at it from a different perspective, to ask others about it, and to actually lean on other strengths. That with that business coach, I never knew that existed. I grew up, I didn't know there was such thing as a business
Yeah.
coach, but I realized there was a difference between being a great carpenter and being a great contractor, a great, someone that ran a great carpentry business. There was a few things I had to learn still. So I reached out and partnered with him and learned a lot. And I'd say that actually planted the seeds of what I'm doing today.
Yeah, amazing. The thought process that created the problem can't actually more like solve the problem. It has to be a different thing. And also, you can't expect to do a particular thing a certain way and look forward to another results by still sticking to that particular old route. This is really amazing. And also, you serve as a combat medic in the US Army, where every decision matters and the cost of unclear leadership was immediate. What is the leadership instinct that served you in that particular crisis, but damaged a team in peacetime?
I think that first part of the question I heard, and then please let me know if I missed a part of it, because that's a great question.
Yeah.
But right away when you asked that question, I'm thinking the one thing that stands out prominently that I learned was to process a stressful situation in a calm way. And it goes such a, it's leadership in crisis. A lot of times,
Yeah.
your leadership will get tested, and when it's tested, it's public. It's in front of everyone, right? We don't get the test in private, unfortunately, right? So we have to learn how to strengthen in our private pursuit and our discipline. So when we're in front of people and the pressure's on and things are collapsing, people aren't happy, things aren't going away. This is all the stuff that doesn't make the highlight reel, right? This is all the parts of leadership that's the real testing and challenging part. And being able to stay calm in that stressful situation, still make clear decisions, own those decisions, and almost learn on the spot. So as a combat medic, we show up at a situation and we learn triage, where you have maybe mass casualties and you have to go ahead and know who to work on first, right? And how to actually go ahead and utilize your team in the moment. Now, here's something I also learned, there's a study called situational leadership, which is very important, because some leaders thrive in working in a crisis, but they treat everything as a crisis. And that's not, if you imagine in peacetime, when it's not crisis, if that person is coming in and they're always urgent and they're always driving, then that can also be a negative to it also. So recognizing the season that you're in, we have 4 seasons in the book in Post Check, but recognizing the season you're in and being able to adjust in that situation accordingly.
Yeah, recognizing the season and being able to kind of make necessary adjustments that fit that particular period of time. Being that, process stressful information in a very calm way. That was really amazing. And also, the book is titled Post Check, and the subtitle named 3 specific traits: bad advice, to be example, and the toxic environment. Which of those 3 did you personally have to overcome first, and what did it cost you before you recognized it?
Ooh, all of the 3. And that's why I put them in there. All of the 3. I remember in my journey at one time, in my frustration, in my low point, in my stress, Benaya, actually kind of praying to God, like, God, why do you keep want to work with a great company, with great people? And it always seems like I'd end up in a situation that was just very like deceiving, right? At times, right? You get so far and you start to see some parts that you just, it's unfortunate to see. So all of those, right? Bad advice, deceiving examples. Bad advice, I'll take it one at a time. Bad advice really comes from a selfish motive, right? It can come from a person that just is kind of like, this is the way I've done it. This is the way everyone needs to do it. And it's bad advice because it doesn't keep you part of it. It doesn't keep the person part of that. They're not thinking about what's best for you. It's more coming from a place of, this is what worked for me, so everyone needs to do it. And why that's bad advice is because it's focused on the wrong person, right? And a lot of people, when they hear bad advice, they think of the extremes. And I always tell people, the tough conversation is actually a lot of small conversations that never happened, right? So we have to be able to address it even when it's just in a seed form and small. Now, deceiving examples, it's really where people get attracted to what, maybe what's shiny and what, the perks of leadership rather than the price of leadership. And when they're just chasing the perks, whether maybe it's a nice office or maybe some bonus, or maybe even it's just the finances, or maybe even it's just the title. Sometimes we want to be called something because we're actually struggling with some identity issues ourselves, but that title of the job of that leader makes us feel successful. You see, all of that's a deceiving example, because the closer you get to it, you realize the price they had to pay for that perk. And it makes you start to question, if you're a person of values, you start to wonder, is that worth it? Because some of the things for myself, I know it wasn't worth it. It was sacrificing things that you'd never get back, right? And almost to a point of, you've seen people that have made those decisions, that they've almost got the success, but they regret it. And if they were given a chance to do it, they wouldn't do it again. Now, the last
Yeah.
part is probably the toughest part, because it's the toxic environments. And I feel like that created so much of a buzzword recently. But the most popular question I get, Benaiah, from that is, Po'okela, how do I change my toxic work environment?
Mm.
And I say, the truth is, that's probably one of the hardest things to do. When I first started as a coach, as an executive coach, the company I partnered with would work on turnaround organizations. So organizations that were going in the red, they're ready to close, and we needed to turn them around. That was the hardest decisions that need to be made. That's what, I don't think people realize how tough that is. So to change a toxic environment needs to start from us being able to look at the mirror and saying, what am I doing to contribute to it?
Mm.
Or
Yeah.
allow it to affect me. When we start to create that environment within ourselves first, what happens is people that thrive in healthy environments start to recognize that. And
Yeah.
I always say, this is the next tough part. The right doors will open, which means sometimes the current door will close. And that's hard for some people, because they have some relational ties where they're at. They don't like the environment, but they like the people. I like my coworkers. I like this, but we can't, that's the tough call in leadership. We have to understand, sometimes we have to move into that better place, because every yes has a no. We can talk more about that. I think I've seen your questions. We can dive into more of that after too.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing bad advice. Give me an example of the environment. And bad advice come from our selfish behavior. Yeah, an environment, a bad environment creates, yeah, what you need to do is to create a sane environment within. It's really amazing. Also, you led a ministry for over a
Mm-hmm.
decade now, raising 4 children, running a contracting business, serving in the army, and build an executive coaching practice. What is the leadership lessons that run through every single one of them, of those contests, the one that prove true, whether the stake were a construction deadline or family dinner or a battlefield?
Wow, that is a great question. That's probably one of the first times someone has asked me that question, honestly. So I'm going to give it some good thought right here as I think it through. Because initially, when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind is what I feel most people either avoid, or they don't see how important it is, even if they're aware of it. And what that is the importance of self-leadership. You see, people automatically think of being a leader as, who do I lead at work? Who do I lead at home? Who do I lead in a ministry? Who do I lead in my community? And some people even ask me, Po'okela, I don't have anyone that reports to me. I'm not a leader yet. And I say, that's tough for me to hear, because the minute you take responsibility for one more person, you become a leader. And that should start with you taking responsibility for your growth, for your development, for your accountability, right? Those are the leaders, if we think about it, those are the leaders that are walking the talk. But a lot of times, if we're waiting for the title, we wait to get a job promotion, or we wait to become a parent, or we wait to be called into ministry. And now we want to, okay, I got to, now I have to apply these principles. And I always tell people, you really don't have to wait. The common thread of every single one is that the minute you start to say, I am the toughest person I'm going to ever have to lead, which is myself, because I don't do the things that I know is true. Why don't I do that? Why do I do certain things that I know continue to harm me? I really want to get this. Why don't I do that? Why do I want to be a person of integrity? Situation, right? Those tough situations, I'd say, are really what we have to look at. That's really what we have to look at first. So that ability to see that self-leadership component, I say the next part is that you really want to protect that growth. If it's that important, whether, as a father, I needed to be a certain father to my children when they were toddlers. I have two that are, approaching their 20s. I have to be a completely different dad to lead adults right now, right? So learning to protect that space, and I can continue to grow in that space.
Yeah, amazing. Learning to protect, the board and be able to kind of grow from that particular piece. And I think it's really amazing. Leadership is about self-leading first before you become more like or leading others. Because if you can't lead yourself, how can you actually even lead others when you can't lead? It's really amazing, and thank you so much for sharing. And also, you have built a full season of healthy leadership. Run, roll, rest, and rejoice up. Most high performing leaders are comfortable in roll, but struggles profoundly with rest. What did you have to personally quit squatting rest with? Laziness, weakness, falling behind before you could actually be able to build your own leadership.
I think the toughest part with rest was realizing that I'm important too, and I think if
Yeah,
you have some of
yeah.
your listeners, it's almost very noble, and it actually is, to be a serving leader, to want to help others and to serve others, right? It's such a great thing to be. So, but we can also be deceived by that. We can feel like all I have to do my entire life is for everyone else, and we drive ourselves. And here's the thing: is I think here's the real test. We end up being much more caring and giving to strangers, and the real test of
Mm,
character is how good we treat those that are closest to us. So I'd see people that were very successful. They're the kindest people in their organization. They told everyone hi. Everyone at work loved them. And then they struggled with their home relationships because they came home and they're completely drained out. They were frustrated. They were
mm.
edgy. I'm tired. I had a long day, and they treated their loved ones the worst. So it's almost, and then they felt guilty for it, and then it's this vicious cycle, right? That you get sucked into, because it seems so noble to go out there and to serve everyone. So I say the rest season would be the toughest if we're very much of a performer, if we very much our identity. That's when your identity is tested to your productivity. A lot of people don't think that their identity is connected to their productivity until they hit a season of rest. We actually call it refine at the moment, because sometimes what we found is some leaders, it actually isn't rest like sleep. It's actually a different form of activity. So some of them is actually going out and actually taking some hikes, but they're getting in nature. They're isolating by themselves, and that component actually calms them down. That actually fills them. So what is the big question in this season is what fills you, and that becomes priority.
Physio becomes the priority. And this is really amazing. Yeah, rest actually more like speak volumes to the fact that you just being good. It's not just to the stranger alone, but for those who are actually more like close to you, and it's being able to reflect deeply. Yeah, and it's really amazing. And also your faith is central to how you lead a culture. What did you have to quit separating faith from professional conduct, values, and strategy before you could bring your whole self into the boardroom without compromising either?
For my faith, Benaya,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I love when hosts can actually open up this conversation. It's when you realize that your leadership isn't built on your strengths.
mm,
It's built on your surrender. And every day I have to surrender. And it's not even in a I want to say fake humility way. It's in an honest reflection of knowing what I can do and
yeah,
what I can't do, and who I'm doing it for at the end of the day. There is an audience of one in all that I do in my faith and my faith foundation, right? And realizing it's not just a Sunday thing I turn on or when I go into ministry or whatever it is. It's every single day. That's why they call it your daily bread. But it's every single day of
yeah,
being able to go ahead and say, this is how I need to be fed also, and this is how I will feed. I will be a vessel. But at the same time, one of the biggest things we brought up earlier is the identity in who I do it, in who I do it for. When I was younger, before I really gave my life to Jesus, I'd say I would chase two things, but I would chase a salary, how much people would pay me, and I would chase a title, how fancy a name that they'd give me and the title. And those two things, if they could give me a great salary and a great title, I'd take
yeah,
it. I'd take it. I wouldn't even count the cost. And I found myself in situations that gave me those things, but then other things that I've been called for as a husband, as a father, as a, those things, or just my own personal health started to suffer because I was too fixated on the wrong foundation, on the wrong
yeah.
identity. So for myself, my faith, it at the end of the day, that's really why I do what I do. A lot of times I think that takes the whole focus off of when people are frustrated and they say, Po'okela, I'm struggling with the place I work in. They don't do this. They don't do that. They don't do this. They don't do that. I say, okay, that hard mirror check at first. So pulse check is all about checking your pulse, like, how we check our heartbeat. And a lot of leaders have lost the life in their leadership. So when we're checking our post check, you're checking for what keeps your heart beating, what actually gives you life. And I'm telling people, when you're doing that, you have to ask that tough question at first, right? Who are you doing it for? And of course, we want to say, well, the paycheck, right? The paycheck comes from this company, so I'm doing it
Yeah.
for this company. But if you're
Yeah.
doing it for them, you're putting those priorities in the wrong hands. If you're doing it for Christ, I'm doing it for Jesus, I'm doing it for my faith. At the end of the day, I know He opens the doors and He'll close the doors, and He has always been faithful in every single season.
Yeah. Amazing. This is really lovely. Yeah, taking faith, yeah, walk to the bigger step compared to laying your trust on what men and what expectation get to come into being. That is more like a little picture comparing to having the big picture, which is more like I'm doing it for God, and that big picture actually gets to kind of shape how you actually do things. It's amazing, and being that, yeah, every now and then you're at peace and you're at ease, being that you are convicted with what you are doing, you're fully persuaded compared to just having to do it for one or two results. That a whole lot of things could, that even you're trying, couldn't actually more like make a whole lot of headway. It's really amazing. So lastly, you talk about rejoice season, celebrating wins and fostering gratitude as a leadership discipline. Not just a nice moment. Those are what do leaders have to quit rushing past before they can actually more like build a culture of celebration?
I think the first thing is they have to quit doing it for the wrong reasons, and the wrong reasons is that we continue to see someone showed a group of leaders a chart that always had an achievement to get to the next level, and I tell people that that chart was missing the people that you want to take to the next level with you.
Yeah,
It just had tasks and it has things to do, but that's why most leaders feel it's lonely at the top. But I tell them it's not. It's actually not lonely if you don't forget the most important thing, and that's people. And leadership is a team sport. A lot of times people, they approach it as an individual sport, and that's why it feels lonely. They don't celebrate themselves, they don't celebrate their team. And I'm not talking, and the reason we really decided when we did the post check, and we decided, you know what, this season is very important. This can't be a skill. This is a season. This is a season that's skipped. And the reason is because when we studied leadership that was sustainable, what we found is that leadership that was sustainable, they didn't wait for an annual gala to rent, to buy balloons and buy pizza and rent this big hall to bring people in. No, they were consistent with it. Every mark that was achieved, they protected time to celebrate with each other. If you look at psychologically what that does to our mind too, that anchors a very positive component to not just achieving a task, but to the people we're
yeah,
doing it with. So the sustainability of that is much more, it gives you a stronger pulse in your leadership. What happens, people lose that vitality, they lose the pulse in their leadership, they lose the passion to do what they do. A lot of times people is like, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm about done, Po'okela. I'm like, if you were doing it and building your post, you'd be on fire right now.
yeah,
Because you're taking the time to actually go ahead and celebrate. Right? It's almost, there is a small seed in there that's always hidden, and it's not being able to recognize and be grateful for the opportunity we was given. We approach tasks as if it's something we got to just check off and done, rather than in Hawaiian culture. I'm born and raised here in Hawaii. In Hawaiian culture, we
yeah,
have this word that's called kuleana. And kuleana will it means responsibility, but the depth of that responsibility is not as a burden. You have a
mm,
responsibility that you are grateful for. Like, it's almost as if, thank you for this kuleana, that I get to care for something that I can be trusted with.
yeah,
That's a completely different way of looking at it, rather than it's
yeah,
like, I got to get this thing done today. No, no, no. Thank you for this kuleana, for this opportunity to make this thing better. Thank you for this opportunity to be trusted with this. That kuleana, I think at the end of the day, when you look at rejoice, then there is a rejoice. Then there is a time we all come back and we celebrate together and we enjoy the win together. That's what I tell people. It doesn't have to be, a high ticket event. It can be, but more so, it has to be connected with people. If your event, your celebration is too much on the agenda and you forget to actually talk to one another, there was no rejoicing that happened, right? Once again, it was another big check off the list. That's all it was.
yeah. Amazing. Great. Yeah. As a leader, more like I'll grow people along and also celebrate them at every point in time. Yeah, because that's what makes leadership lovely, going to the fact that as you're growing, you're actually lifting the your followers alongside. which make it more exciting. Yeah, you're a joy season. This is really amazing, man. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the great questions, but I really appreciate you, really diving in and challenging a lot of the work that we do. We're really passionate about the research that we found and the impact that we see it's making. We know that there's a lot of voices speaking into it. Our belief is that there should be more. We're always open to having more conversations speaking into sustainable leadership.
Yeah, amazing. Also, from all things, we'd love to get your book and also follow you across various platforms. And how can they reach out, and where's the best platform?
So the easiest way right now, whichever platform that you're listening in on, I will give you all the links that they can actually access it, just to make it very easy. Take a look at the notes for this show, and you'll see all the different ways. If you are online right now, if you just search on Amazon, my name Po'okela Mossman, post check will come up. You can get the book right on Amazon. I have a link on the website that you can get it also there. If you take a look at for that website, we occasionally run different programs and promotions through there throughout the seasons. Each month we celebrate. I do some months that's directed for youth. I'll tell your listeners, I'll share with them actually some things we're working on in real time right now is we're working on a children's book, a youth book around post check. So for youth organizations, we did a few events for youth, and we had a lot of requests asking for a book directed with the same concepts of healthy leadership for youth. So we're working on that, and that's looking to come out in the next November of this year. So November of this year, we'll have that. But if you just search me on LinkedIn, that's where you can find me, Facebook or Instagram, you'll get a chance to see the work that we're doing, even on YouTube. And I always tell people, if you reach out and just shoot me a message, I'd be happy to have a conversation. We do one-on-one coaching, executive coaching for groups. We speak at events and conferences, and we love to partner with you in any way.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Po'okela. This has really been an amazing conversation. Yeah, you're reminded that the ripple effect of how we reach far beyond the office and into the home and family of every person we are responsible for is exactly what this audience needed to hear. And from our audience who love to reach out, just we make reference of the various link. Check the show notes and you see the link to easily reach out. Thank you so much for sharing your leaders. Yeah, remember that staying in leadership season that is burning you and everyone near you is never the safe option. Learning to run, roll, rest and rejoice is. It's really a pleasure and honor having the show.
It's been an honor being here. Thank you for the invite. Great conversation, and I look forward to continuing to work. Thanks, Benaya, and thanks to your audience.